In this video, I'll be showcasing an exciting and aggressive opening known as the fried liver attack, which arises from the Italian game. This line begins with the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, knight g5, where white immediately targets the weak f7 square, d5. The game continues to heat up with e takes d5. Knight takes d5. In this position, don't take knight to d5 because it's a mistake. Why? I'll show you what will happen. Knight takes f7, a daring knight sacrifice that aims to lure the black king out and launch a relentless attack. We'll see how white capitalizes on this early aggression to put immense pressure on black, forcing precise defensive play. Black accepts the sacrifice on f7. White checks the king with the queen, forcing it to move. Black's king goes to e6, which is not ideal but the best under the circumstances. White develops another knight to c3, adding more pressure to the center and preparing to bring more pieces into the attack. Black moves the knight to e7, aiming to defend key squares and possibly prepare for castling queenside if the opportunity arises. White pushes the d-pawn, aiming to open lines and further attack the black king. Black responds with c6, trying to solidify the center and possibly prepare to block the d for pawn's advance. White captures another pawn on e5, threatening more checks and opening lines. Black responds with b5, attacking the bishop and hoping to drive it away. White retreats the bishop to a safe square, maintaining pressure on the black king and keeping the diagonal open for future attacks. In this position, white is leveraging the open lines and the exposed position of the black king to launch a relentless attack, while black must play accurately to defend and find counterplay opportunities. Now, you see what will happen if you move black knight, take d5. Now, I'll show you what the correct move is if your opponent takes your pawn on d5. Black plays knight d4, creating a counterattack on the f2 pawn, and putting pressure on white's knight and bishop. White pushes the pawn to d6, aiming to disrupt black's pawn structure and open lines. Black captures the d6 pawn with the queen, centralizing it and keeping control over the center. White sacrifices the bishop on f7, forcing the black king to move and lose the right to castle. Black captures the bishop, bringing the king to e7. White castles kingside, bringing the rook into play and preparing for further attacks, but it's a mistake. Black plays h6, aiming to drive away the knight on g5. White retreats the knight to f3. Black captures the bishop on f7 with the king, which was left hanging after white castled. In this position, black has an advantage because black must play accurately and carefully to neutralize these threats and attempt to stabilize the position. Let's go back to this position. Now, you know what to do if your opponent moves to castled kingside. White retreats the bishop to b3, aiming to keep it active and maintain pressure. Black captures the bishop with the knight, intending to reduce white's attacking potential. White recaptures the knight with the pawn, opening the file. Black plays h6 to drive away white's knight from g5. White retreats the knight to f3, repositioning it to a safer square. Black pushes the e-pawn to e4, attacking white's knight and aiming to open lines for an attack. White moves the queen to e2, defending the knight and connecting the rooks. Black moves the king to f7, trying to find safety and connect the rooks as well. White retreats the knight to g1, possibly aiming to reposition it via f3. Black develops the bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. White pushes the f-pawn to f3, attacking the bishop and trying to break the pin, but it's a mistake. Black captures the pawn on f3, opening the g-file and creating potential threats. White recaptures the pawn with the knight, increasing control over the center and opening the e-file. Black moves the rook to d1, putting pressure on white's queen and preparing to control the open d-file. In this position, black has an advantage because white is queenless. Now, let's go back to this position. After queen, take d6, white sacrifices the knight, capturing on f7 and threatening the rook on h8. Queen to c6, attacking the knight on f7 and preparing for counterplay. White captures the rook, gaining material but losing the knight to black's queen, but it's a mistake. Black captures the g2 pawn with the queen, threatening white's rook on f1 and eyeing the g1 square for possible mate threats. White moves the rook to f1, preparing to defend against the queen's invasion. Black centralizes the queen to e4, maintaining threats and preparing for a discovered check. White develops the bishop to e2, covering critical squares and defending against mate threats, but it's a blunder. Black moves the knight to f3, delivering a check and attacking the rook on f1, and it's a checkmate. Now, let's go back to this position. What if your opponent moves to c3, prepares to kick the knight with a pawn move? Black counterattacks on the queen side, attacking white's bishop on c4. White captures the knight, gaining a tempo by attacking the c4 pawn. Black captures the bishop with the b pawn, maintaining material balance. White captures another pawn in the center. Queen captures on d5. White captures the knight, gaining material and opening lines for their pieces. Black captures the knight on c4, maintaining material balance, but allowing white some initiative. White captures the pawn on g7, threatening to promote. Black captures back with the bishop, stopping the pawn from promoting and developing a piece. White castles, bringing the king to safety and connecting the rooks. Black develops the bishop to a strong diagonal, targeting the e4 pawn. White pushes the pawn to f3, supporting the center. Black moves the bishop to d4, delivering a check. White moves the king to h1, getting out of the check. Black castles queenside, bringing the rook into play and preparing for an attack. White pushes the pawn to d3, solidifying the center and preparing to develop the bishop. Black moves the queen to g6, aiming at the king side. White develops the knight, attacking the e4 pawn and preparing to put pressure on the center. Black brings the rook to g8, aligning with the queen for a potential attack on the g-file. White pushes the pawn to g3, preventing any potential sacrifices or threats on g2. Black captures the knight on c3, doubling white's pawns. Pawn takes c3. Queen to h5. White moves the rook to b1, targeting the b7 pawn and preparing to open the b-file. Black sacrifices the rook on d3, opening lines and attacking white's center. White moves the queen to e2, defending the second rank and attacking the rook on d3. Black captures the bishop on f3 with the bishop, attacking the rook on f1 and threatening mate. In this position, black has winning material.